and wellness are the most important things in your life. It impacts on how everything else happens and is received by you. Most of the times, do we give it much attention as we should? That's why Capuchin TV is bringing you this health program every Friday, starting from 9 a.m. to help you embark on the journey to wellness and living a healthy life. It is important to point out that mental health is more about wellness than sickness. Self-care is not selfish. Some of the factors that can make a big difference in health wellness are diet, enough rest, exercise, posture, and avoiding use of alcohol. Enjoy this conversation with me, Maureen Kimani, every Friday from 9 a.m. on our Health Corner show here at Capuchin TV. Your health is your wealth.
A very good morning. Thank you, dear viewer, for joining us on our Health Corner show right here at Capuchin TV with me, Maureen Kimani, who will bring you experts from different fields just to make sure your health is catered for and you have the right and the correct information about your well-being. Well, today we have a quite interesting conversation that is childhood trauma, and it isn't something that you just get over it when you grow up. And well, it occurs more than you think. And according to World Health Organization, that is WHO, 40 million children below 15 years becomes a victim of violence every year. Well, what kind of violence are we talking about here? How can it be prevented? We'll just get to know in a bit because we have an expert in the studio. She will be introducing herself in just a few. And in case you have any question, comment, and observation, or any kind of topic you'd love us to cover in our Health Corner show, you can do that on 0717-424-866, or you can use our SMS number, that is 21760. A very good morning. Welcome to the conversation. Hello, dear.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very good. How about you?
I'm also doing very well. I'm happy to be here.
Yes, and my apologies because today we have started the show a little bit late.
Well,
exactly, and because it's the very first time we are having you here in our studio, I'd love you to introduce yourself to the viewers, tell them who you are and what you do.
Hi there. My name is MARYANNE WARUGURU. I am a counseling psychologist and also an award-winning mental health champion. So first of all, like I had told you, I remember when we were having the conversation, I'm a counseling psychologist first, but then also I'm a mental health advocate. That is to mean I do a lot of awareness creation on my social media. I'm also a YouTuber, and also just all the platforms that I have. And then I also do some community outreaches where I go out and educate people about mental health, because you see, it is something that is yet to be taken in Kenya, and we need to do a lot of education. So that's why I do that. They can find me to also do therapy. I do therapy both individual, group, and I also do corporate trainings. So that's a little bit about me.
Oh, wow, we can say you're very versatile on that, expertise of the health. And as you just mentioned, that we're here to create awareness and is part of what you do in your daily life.
Exactly.
And let's now get into the conversation. When you talk about childhood trauma, what do you mean, or what would you like people to understand out there? What is childhood trauma?
Yeah, this is a very important topic to talk about, because actually a lot of times as therapists, we always ask you, how did you grow up? So when we talk about childhood trauma, we are talking about the experiences that you had as a child that are very distressful and also emotionally painful. A lot of times when you even mentioned about violence, people just picture the physical kind of violence or rape in other circumstances. But trauma comes from every kind of violence and abuse, and that is inclusive of also emotional abuse, which is things like being neglected, maybe not even being catered for emotionally. Maybe when you find a child goes to a parent, they've gone through something, but they are shut down. Don't talk about that. So when we talk about childhood trauma, maybe to just go into the what causes it now, we have different things, as I mentioned, physical abuse.
Before you, let me just cut you out there before you tell us what causes these childhood trauma.
Yeah.
Have you ever experienced child trauma yourself?
Yes. Actually, I do a lot of sharing when I'm doing the mental health advocacy. I talk a lot about myself and my experiences. So my childhood trauma was abandonment. So you find when you're abandoned, you see these kids, maybe they're on the streets. Okay, I wasn't in the streets, but cases of where a parent walks away, or maybe even separations and divorces, then a child becomes abandoned. And you know the problem is that sense, the message to the child that maybe they're not wanted, or also that the parent, maybe this child did something for them to go away. So that is my experience. And also as we continue sharing, I can share how that has affected me as well.
And of course, how you overcame that.
Absolutely.
All right. And what does trauma do to a person?
Yeah. So trauma, as we have said, usually the direct definition of a trauma is wound. So you see the same way you can cut yourself and you have a wound that remains, that is what happens when you go through a trauma. So usually these experiences can be recurrent. Maybe you find that it is something that keeps happening. You hear people who have gone through rape and it keeps happening. Maybe it was by a neighbor, a father, a relative, and it keeps reoccurring. So that also causes, we have stages as well, acute, and then we have, when it happens multiple times, it causes even chronic and multiple traumas. So when that happens, then it affects a child. When we talk about mental health, we look at three aspects: your mental, your emotional, and your behavioral. So when you ask about what happens to a person who goes through trauma, in terms of their mind, their thoughts, maybe they start being very afraid, they have irrational thoughts, maybe they are very confused. You may find someone is very confused. They cannot be able to concentrate. Everything to do with thoughts. And then that is where even feelings of anxiety come in. And then when you go to emotional, you find someone is crying, they're very sad, they have mood swings, they're not able to regulate their emotions. And then lastly, behavior. You see children having behavioral issues, you think, mtoto ni kichwa ngumu. No, they're going through something and you need to figure out the underlying issue that is there. So maybe a child starts misbehaving, they start fighting, or they withdraw, they don't talk anymore, or they're very afraid, they startle every time, maybe a loud noise, or even I've had parents who say, because they are used to hitting their child, every time they raise their hand, the child already freezes. Yes. So that is an effect of trauma. So that is what you can be on the lookout for, so that you are able to help this child. Yeah.
Okay, you mentioned that child trauma can also be referred to as a wound.
Yeah.
We know that some wounds can be seen. Just as you said, some cut can be seen, and others cannot be seen. How do you tell how can you be able to learn these childhood trauma behaviors? How can you tell that a child is affected by this child trauma?
Usually it's the symptoms that I have mentioned. So you see, most of the time, if it's mental, you cannot really be able to see, but you see it through the behaviors. You know, so let's say, for example, I feel very sad. You can't tell, but you can see through my facial expression. Most of the time, we advise parents to always be very conscious and also very intentional in terms of looking at the behavior changes in your child. If you know your child is very talkative, very playful, you look at them and you start seeing they are avoiding to go play. then that's a red flag. You see there are changes in terms of how they interact with people. You see changes in terms of even their grades. They don't want to go to school anymore. Something may be happening at school. If maybe they are really clinging to you as their parent, we see that especially in the smaller kids, when they are going to school, they cry, they don't want to go. Maybe go and see what is it that is happening, and then have conversations with your children. You know, a lot of times we think a child is just a child, what do they know? But they are a human being,
and
just
very
in
sensitive.
Yes, they are a whole human being, just very small. So definitely there are things that haven't developed, but they can have these conversations. Ask them what is happening in school, when they go out to play, what happened, and they can be able to tell you these things. So mostly check on behavioral changes. If you notice any changes in terms of sleep, in terms of interactions, in terms of even eating, in terms of how they interact with their peers, then know there is something. Yeah.
Right. And I remember I did catch you, beginning of the conversation. You were talking about some of the causes of these childhood trauma. Now, this is the time you can talk about it. What are some of the causes of childhood trauma?
Yeah. So the reason I brought up the issue of wound is because ideally, like I said, people just think about the physical traumas or abuse, but this is not usually just it. We have other abuses such as the emotional ones. So the emotional one can be neglect, can be abandonment, can be even, like I said, a child brings up an issue and you're not there. So we have things we call adverse childhood experiences, and these are usually experiences where children do not really have the capability to deal with them, and they are very overwhelming and distressing. So these ones include the physical part being abuse, maybe they're being beaten, rape as well. And then the second one is neglect, where you find maybe a parent walks out, their needs are not met. You know, when you're young, you need your emotional needs need to be met, and these are usually security, love, safety, and just belonging. So if you are not given love, if you're not given security, if you are not a part of the family, then this will affect you. And then also issues at home. So this can include having a parent with a mental illness, having a parent with abuse, substance abuse, having a parent who is being beaten, violence, GBV, domestic violence, when they witness that, it also affects them. Having a parent who goes to jail as well. So a lot of times for trauma to happen, you don't have to necessarily go it. Also observing it also affects a child. Yeah.
And how does this child trauma cause a child's development in long-term and in short-term cases?
So usually when you look at a child, the developmental stages, you find that we usually say a person usually grows their cognitive abilities by 25. So as you're growing up, the part of your brain that is in charge of logic, is in terms of problem solving, is in charge of the rational thinking, is not yet developed. So when a child is going through the trauma, this part also becomes underactivated, meaning it does not really develop as it should. Because you're busy thinking about what is happening around me and keeping yourself safe and, protecting yourself. We also have another part of the brain that is responsible. It's like an alarm system of the brain. It's called the amygdala. It usually releases those chemicals where you feel so anxious, like you just know something wrong is going to happen. So this one is the one that becomes overactivated. So you're always, like I said, you're always startled. You feel like something wrong is going to happen. Like I said, a parent lifts their hands and you're already shaking. So that is because the amygdala is overactivated and it senses danger. The other part of the brain also has to do with emotional regulation. That one also is underactivated. So it doesn't really grow as it should. So you find that this person, as they grow up, their danger response is so hyperactivated, but their rationality, their emotional regulation is not as effective. So that's why you find now, as we grow up, we are not able to make decisions, we are not able to solve our problems, we're not able to manage our emotions and our moods because we did not learn that when we were growing up. Yeah.
All right. And in your area of expertise, how common is childhood trauma?
It is actually very common because even as counselors, as we are taking clients through their issues, even in adulthood, we always go back to how was it when you were growing up. And a lot of times you'll find even like 90% of them say, I actually experienced these things. Either we say ages 0 to 7 are the formative stages. Sometimes also the teenage experiences can also affect us. Anytime before the brain is fully developed, it affects you. So a lot of times, like you mentioned, WHO says that 40 million children go through abuse before the age of 16. So you can imagine they also carry that with them in their adulthood. So a lot of times I also get kids who are sent away from school, like the one I was mentioning I had before. You find maybe they have issues, they are suspended, and a lot of times you'll find there is something happening either at home or at school. So that is something that is very common and something that I always explore, since I have been trained as a trauma-informed practitioner. So all the time we get a client, we have to look at their childhood experiences. Yeah.
And would you say that parents are not paying too much attention to their children? I mean, their upbringing, that's why the childhood trauma is very common?
Definitely. You know, we usually say people who have not healed are the ones who cause pain as well. So a lot of times it's also very important for parents to heal their own traumas as well, so that they can also be careful not to pass them. Because we also talk about generational trauma. It's when you went through trauma, my mom alini tukana, then I passed the same and the same. And actually there's usually a photo that goes around showing how you can break that by putting a barrier. Maybe if I have healed, then I won't pass that. So a lot of times you find that some parents, not all, focus on just the provision. Nimekulipia school fees. You have a roof under your head. That's enough. They feel like maybe their children do not have space, they do not have opinions, and they don't consider them. But it is very important to just pay attention to the emotional side of the child. They're not just growing physically.
David and Goliath, best Superbook trip ever that had
that's with you as a parent, and then now you teach that to your children. And if you don't know how, you can always seek people like us to be able to take you through that. We have therapists who focus on parenting and conscious parenting. There's a difference. Not just being a parent, you go to work, you come back home,
you do not,
yes, you don't know what happened in school, you don't want to know, and maybe even you find your child is asleep, you don't know what is happening to them. But if you're conscious and attentive, you will see these things. They will tell you because they will feel comfortable to tell you. Yeah.
Okay, and let me ask you this question before maybe we take a break, because you've been able to talk a lot about childhood trauma. What are some of the causes? What triggers these trauma?
When we talk about triggers, usually is now later on in life. Yeah. So we have talked about the causes and the effects that they have. So a lot of times you will find that now in your adulthood, there are things that happen that look like the trauma you went through. So if someone maybe neglects you, or they dismiss you in a relationship, so you find issues in relationships can trigger you. Yeah, you find maybe you're attracted to emotionally unavailable people because maybe this is what you went through growing up. Maybe you had an absent parent, or they neglected you emotionally as well. We have things like when we seek external validation and we don't get it. I want you to tell me I look good, and if you don't tell me then I don't look good, then that's a problem, you see. So a lot of times these triggers are things that actually take us back. Maybe after we come back from the break, I can talk about the wounds, the trauma wounds that we get, so that we can look at these wounds and what now awakens them. Because a wound is a wound. It never really goes away. Even if maybe if you have, I have some wounds here that I got when I was so young, and they're still there. So even if I ignore them, I don't remember them actually, but they're still there. So that is why now the triggers come about and poke those wounds, and they remind you of those wounds, and you need to deal with them. Yeah.
Oh, that's a very interesting conversation now with MARYANNE WARUGURU, who is a counseling psychologist and award-winning of mental health champion.
Yes.
Congratulations, by the way, to you.
Thank you, thank you.
And we're going to take a very short break, but when we come back, we shall talk more about this childhood trauma. How can parents improve and take and maybe make sure that they give attention that is deserved to their kids, just to make sure they may not be affected with such kind of situation in their lives, and also even passing to their generation that comes. As you have mentioned, it can be passed through. And so stay tuned for that. We take a very short break, and in case you still have any question about this childhood trauma, you can do that on 0717 424 866, and our SMS number is 21760. Stay tuned.
Synodial Prayer. We stand before you, Holy Spirit, as we gather together in your name. With you alone to guide us, make yourself at home in our hearts. Teach us the way we must go and how we are to pursue it. We are weak and sinful. Do not let us promote disorder. Do not let ignorance lead us down the wrong path, nor partially influence our actions. Let us find in you our unity, so that we may journey together to eternal life and not stray from the way of truth and what is right. We ask these of you, who are at work in every place and time, in the communion of the Father and the Son, forever and ever. Amen. Sala kwa dunia yetu. Ee Mungu muumba mwenye nguvu zote, uliye ndani ya vitu vyote ulimwenguni, ikiwa ni pamoja na viumbe vyako vile vidogo zaidi. Huruma yako inakumbatia vyote vinavyoishi na vilivyo hai. Tunyunyizie uwepo wa upendo wako, ili tuweze kulinda maisha na umaridadi wake. Tujaze amani yako, ili tuishi kama ndugu wa kiume na wa kike, bila kumdhuru yoyote. Ee Mungu, mfadhili wa maskini, tusaidie kuwaokoa waliotelekezwa na kusahaulika katika dunia hii, wenye dhamani kubwa machoni mwako. Tupe uponyaji maishani mwetu, ili tuitunze dunia na wala tusiharibu, kwamba tuvune umaridadi, wala sio uchafuzi na uharibifu. Gusa nyoyo za wale ambao hutafuta kufaidika wenyewe pekee, bila kuwajali maskini wa dunia. Tufundishe kuvumbua dhamani ya kila kitu. Tujazwe heshima na kutafakari, kutambua kwamba tumeunganika pakubwa na kila kiumbe, tunaposafiri kuelekea kwenye mwangaza wako usio na mwisho. Tunashukuru kwa kuwa nasi kila siku. Tupe moyo, tunakuomba, katika haraka zetu za kutafuta haki, upendo na amani. Amina. Sala hii ilichapishwa katika waraka wa kitume wa Baba Mtakatifu Francisco Laudato Si. Ni sala ya wale wote wanaoamini Mwenyezi Mungu muumba mwenye nguvu zote.
Your health and wellness are the most important things in your life. It impacts on how everything else happens and is received by you. Most of the times, do we give it much attention as we should? That's why Capuchin TV is bringing you this health program every Friday, starting from 9 a.m. to help you embark on the journey to wellness and living a healthy life. It is important to point out that mental health is more about wellness than sickness. Self-care is not selfish. Some of the factors that can make a big difference in health wellness are diet, enough rest, exercise, posture, and avoiding use of alcohol. Enjoy this conversation with me, Maureen Kimani, every Friday from 9 a.m. on our Health Corner show here at Capuchin TV. Your health is your wealth.
Welcome back, dear viewer, on our Health Corner show right here at Capuchin TV with me, Maureen Kimani. And our conversation today is about childhood trauma, of which we have been able to talk about it from the meaning and some of the causes, and how also can parents help maybe pay attention to children who have these childhood trauma in the society. And in the studio we have a guest that is an expert, MARYANNE WARUGURU, who is a counseling psychologist and award-winning mental health champion right here with us, and she is helping us to understand more about these childhood trauma. Welcome back, MARYANNE.
Thank you.
Yes, now I think before we had gone for the break, you mentioned about emotional wounds.
Yes.
What are they?
So as I had mentioned, whenever a child goes through trauma, they become wounded emotionally, not necessarily physically. And we usually have 4 wounds that they have. The first wound is usually of abandonment, which is what I mentioned about myself. So when you have an abandonment wound, it tells you that people will always leave me, that I am not safe, that I am not wanted. We also have a trust wound. You hear people who say, I don't trust so easily.
Trust issues?
Yes, I have trust issues. So they always feel unsafe around people. They cannot be able to open up. They don't feel... I have had clients who tell me, if people know me for who I am, they won't want me. So they always act or fake or have a mask so that someone doesn't really leave them. We also have a guilt wound. I don't know if you've ever seen those people who always say sorry. Sorry.
Do you mean that it's not being them being courteous?
No, you should only say sorry if you have done something wrong. But there are people who anytime, or even maybe in one sentence, they will say sorry like 3 times. This is when you always feel guilty of something that you actually haven't done. So this kind of a person will also, if maybe we have conflict, instead of me confronting you, I'll feel sorry that I made you do that to me. You see, that is not healthy, because I need to hold you accountable as well. So those are some of the wounds that we usually have. And you see now, these kinds of wounds, like I've mentioned, they also translate into adulthood. So if you realize that you do these things that we have mentioned, then you know you have a wounded inner child. We usually talk about something we call an inner child. So that means even if you grow up, you have that child in you. If they were wounded, they are still within you. They never leave. So they will always control you. That's why you find there are people who act in a way, and you're like, mbona una behave kama mtoto? Why are they so childish? But it's because they were wounded when they were younger, and they never really developed to, let's say, like my 20 plus years. Ladies, we don't say our age.
Forever 20.
Yes, 16.
Okay.
So
they say it's 16.
yeah, so you find that I'm 20-something years, but then I still am behaving like the 5-year-old girl who was left. It's because of that wound. So we need to really observe them. Yeah.
Okay, and are there any treatment for these childhood trauma? And if so, are there some effective treatments too?
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of times you will find that in therapy, like I mentioned, maybe if I have an emotional wound, then I will come to the therapy room saying, we had a problem with my boyfriend, or I always do this in my relationship. So I will not deal with that. Usually the things that bring people to therapy are just what you see. But we look at the underlying issues. So that's why we will dig into now the childhood. So oftentimes, a lot of people, as we grow up, we tend to bury our traumas. Because if I say my mom used to be argumentative, or she never gave attention to me, you know, it feels like I'm saying you're a bad mom, and I don't want to say that. But it is very good to acknowledge that this happened to me. But oftentimes we suppress it. Yeah. So we usually have different 3 types of responses from trauma. 4 actually. Fight, flight, that is something people know. Either you become someone who fights a lot, or, you know, just cussing people around. Flight is when you run away. Every time there's a problem, you're running away. And you see, that's why we get things like even substance abuse, risky behavior and stuff. And then we have the other ones, which are called freeze. Freeze is when you don't know what to do. So even a child, they may go through something and they'll just look frozen, they will not talk, they will withdraw. You don't know how to get out of that situation. Then we have fawn. Fawn is when you befriend the abuser. So this is where we talk about people pleasing. You know, such people who are people pleasers, they want to do something for people so that they are not abused or, you know, violated. And all of these responses are what we figure out in the treatment. So we usually have a theory in therapy. It's called the psychodynamic theories. They help us to help you dig into what happened, acknowledge what happened, see the result of that, which is the wound, and start taking care of that wound before now you get the right coping mechanisms to deal with your adult self now. So it is something that takes, it's a process, I will say, but it's something that is very possible. Also sometimes if someone is going through anxiety, depression, they may need medication as well, just to help balance the moods. We also have other mental health conditions that are as a result of these experiences. So also that one we recommend medication plus therapy. But then also before we get into adulthood, even a child can be helped so that these experiences they've gone through don't affect them later on in life. So also them, we can take them through the trauma healing, we can take them through. As children, they draw, they write about what they have seen, so that they can be able to process it in a way that doesn't affect them in future.
Actually, I was about to ask you that question. How can parents or caregivers help these children to cope up with this childhood trauma?
Because it's very important for them to do something younger. You know, it's better safe than sorry. At least if you're able to deal with it that time, it's better than someone going to therapy 20, 30 years later. So what they can do is, first of all, like we had said, trauma causes someone to, it threatens their safety. Create a safe environment for your child. So even if it's issues to do with divorce, you know, a parent, you can't do something about it. If it is the death of a loved one, just create a safe environment for them. Create routine. that is something that was really talked about even during COVID times. Even if schools were interrupted, parents were told, create a routine for your child, how they're going to wake up, what they're going to do, their studies and stuff. This creates that sense of safety. Like, even if maybe daddy left, even if so-and-so died, even if this is happening, I still have that safety and routine, and things haven't really been interrupted. The other one is connections. Oftentimes, as human beings, we just need connection. We need a sense of connection with other people. We need a sense of belonging. So a lot of times it's important also for a parent to create that in their child. Connect with them, learn them. Like I said, this is a whole human being you've created, even if they're 2 years old. So get to learn them, spend time with them, play with them. You know, when you do these things, they feel, yes, I belong. And then also involve them in making certain decisions. You've seen children say, I don't want that school, but you insist, Sini mimi nalipa school fees. I've already bought the uniform, you're going. But get to know why is it that they don't want to, yeah? And then also, another thing is to give them a sense of responsibility. You know, this one shows that they are capable of making their own choices. They are capable of doing things. So if maybe you give them a chore, just a basic chore, go wash the dishes, make your bed. You know how accomplished a child feels when they do that, and also appreciate them. Don't make it look so obvious, like as you're supposed to do that. Appreciate them as well, and it gives them that sense of responsibility and fulfillment. So that is what I would encourage for us to do. And then if as a parent, you're not able to do it because also you might be going through the same trauma, seek for help. Seek for help from neighbors, from friends, from relatives. And if you don't have that, also go to professionals. They can be able to even do family therapy where everybody can sit there and explain what it is that they are feeling. So, you know, also as a parent, it depends on the age of your child. So if it is a smaller kid, it's more possible to connect with them. If it's a teenager, it may be, yes, it may be harder, but just allow them space. If they're withdrawing, find things to do with them together. Instead of saying, oh, nashindaga kwa simu, or why are you locking yourself? Propose something else that you can do as a family, and then you can get to ask them questions as you're doing this. So also don't go, come, we need to talk. You know, that one also gives them anxiety. You know, yes, it's scary. They start wondering, oh my God, what did I do? Another thing that we always talk about in therapy is there's usually what happens, and then there's your story about what happened. So for example, I step on you. You can choose to see that I hate you, or you can choose to see that I made a mistake or I didn't see you. So your story is what will cause your reaction. So also as children as going through these things, look at what story they are coming up with. It can be that so-and-so left because I was a bad child. No, assure them that it has nothing to do with you. If you're going through divorce, reassure them that Daddy and Mommy still love you, and they will always be there for you. You can even have 2 homes now. But when you ignore and be like, what are just to, ata me, I'm going through my own issues, then it will affect them in the long run. So figure out what story they are getting from these happenings by asking them questions and reassuring them, because you are the adult.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I think you've dwelt a lot on what parents can do to ensure that their children don't experience these childhood trauma. What about the schools and community organization? How can they help children who are maybe affected with these child trauma? How can they help them to cope with that experience?
Basically, it's the same. So creating safety, creating connection, and creating responsibility. So if it is in a school, how do you create the safety? By making sure the school is safe, if the child goes through something like there's fighting and they are feeling very unsafe, then you can make sure that they have a safe environment. We always talk about trauma-informed schools, where teachers are also aware of something called trauma, so that you also don't re-traumatize your children. They've gone through their issues at home, and you, instead of tending to that, you're causing even more trauma. So be careful, observe them. Children are very different. Observe them. Children spend the most time at school, like 8 hours or so. So that is when the teacher will learn them. Unfortunately, there are so many kids, and sometimes they may not realize. But anytime you notice a change in a child, then be very careful, pay more attention to them, what is happening to them. And then also connection is making sure that the child feels connected to their peers. If it's playing, if you notice a child who is not playing with the rest, there is something wrong. So creating that, even engaging them in class. You know, those students who never raise their hands, it's because they were very anxious or they don't want to be laughed at. Engage them, yeah? And if that's not possible, even call them after the class and ask them what's happening. And then the other one for responsibility, definitely things like telling them to make their beds, doing the duties, maybe cleaning their classes, involving them in such sports activities, extracurricular activities in general. Those ones just give them that sense of responsibility, belonging, and that, oh, I am actually capable of doing that, and appreciating them again. Yeah. Okay,
that's quite amazing. You've been able to, elaborate of how parents, the society, teachers in school, they can be able to make sure that these children are catered for. What are some of the misconceptions of child trauma?
Like I mentioned, a child is not a person, so people expect that maybe when these things are happening, the child does not really, they don't know what is happening, because we know a child does not understand death, for example. So you're like, okay, they are not affected. So a misconception is that children are not affected by things that are happening. They actually know what is happening. So you need to talk to them and explain to them what is happening. The other thing that I would say is we expect that now these wounds will just disappear because I'm growing up. I love movies. So there's this movie, I don't think I remember the name, but it was about a person who grew up in the streets, like in a ghetto, and then he grew up to be very successful, and then the things caught up with him. So a lot of times you'll find maybe I go through abuse in childhood, and then I create a very safe environment for myself as I grew up. As long as you haven't dealt with the wound, it will still haunt you. So another thing is that the other misconception is that it disappears. It doesn't. It will always come up, especially when triggered by these things that we talked about earlier. So the other thing is that a child is not a person. Like I said, they are a person. It's just that they haven't developed their problem solving, decision making, and rationality, but they are still growing. And then also that children only need to be provided for physically and maybe school fees. They also need to be provided for emotionally. Yeah.
Okay. And I think I mentioned in the beginning of the program that childhood trauma isn't something you just get over as you grow up. It occurs more than you think. Well, and I think as we are winding up with our show, what's your parting shot, or maybe in case you have left something you'd love to share to our viewers and people watching out there on child trauma?
First of all, thank you for bringing up this topic. It's very important. A lot of people need to be aware of such things, because we usually see people out here doing some things, but they are not really aware of why they do what they do. So it's important for you to ask yourself, why do I do what I do? And then it's also important to something that I hadn't mentioned before is that you can do something we call reparenting. Reparenting means if you did not get your emotional needs met when you are younger, you can do that for yourself now. Once you have been able to heal, once you have been able to realize this is what happened to me, then you can start providing that for yourself. You can start making yourself feel safe. You can connect with yourself. You can make yourself responsible. So that is how you deal with it. And then also emotional regulation is very important. I mentioned that when you go through trauma, you don't know how to deal with emotions, but it's very important to know that emotions are natural. They are neither good nor bad. They just are. So you need to learn how to manage them. What is important is how to manage them. So you can do things like just breathing in and out. Oftentimes, even right now, maybe before I ask you, you don't know when you're breathing in or out. It becomes something very mundane. But you can be very intentional and just maybe every evening or every morning, just take some time and breathe in and out. That will regulate your nervous system. That is something also I didn't mention. Once, when I mentioned about the part of the brain that makes you very alert and you know that something wrong is going to happen, your nervous system becomes dysregulated. So you're always just startled, and I would have sat like this, like I want to run away. But you need to start creating that sense of calm, relaxed. So you need to, people see these things for yoga and meditation and think they're just white people things. They really help, and that is something that you can incorporate in your daily tasks. Connect with people. People in this age, we cancel people, we say, fake friends, new life, new me, things like that. But it's important to connect with people. Find people who you share things in common with, Also for a child. Help them connect with others. Help them play. We live in places where people have gated communities. Your children never go out to play. Imagine that is really important for them. So also play. Another thing about the inner child healing is going back to the things you used to love as a child. If you used to love drawing, start doing that more often. If you loved singing, me by there, I used to love singing. I even doing that. I wasn't doing that for quite some time, but now I do. I listen to music, I sing in the shower, I dance alone. So do things that will really excite your inner child. Go play. We have even events for trampolines for adults. Go play so that you connect with your inner child and start talking to yourself. Start having positive messages to yourself. And that is how now it helps you to deal with your inner child and take care of those wounds. And connecting with your inner child. Don't shut them down. Connect with them. Tell them, I love you. You're safe. We are here. I will take care of you. The things you wished you had from your parents.
Okay, all right. And let me just read a comment here from MCJ. He's saying that Adhika well represented. Say hi to our guest today. He said hi. Thank you for following up. And if maybe a person would love to reach out to you, how can they get in touch with you?
I am available at Koinange Street, Ratansi Building, 2nd floor. But usually they can just find me first on my social media. I call myself Therapist Marianne everywhere. If you search LinkedIn, Instagram, I'm very active on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Therapist Marianne or Maryanne Waruguru. You will always find me, and because I'm active, even if you DM me, I will see. And then also maybe I can give out my number.
If you feel free, you can share.
Yeah, I have a number. It's 0723 629 885. 0723 629 885. So they can call me and we can even book sessions for them. I do both virtual and physical. So the physical ones, I take them up Koinange Street, Ratansi Building, or also along Thika Road. I do them opposite Garden City.
Wow.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Marianne, for making time and for being here in our studio and in our Health Corner show. We appreciate that. And we think thank you so much for your time. And may God bless you and all the very best in your work.
Thank you for having me.
All right. That is MARYANNE WARUGURU, who is a counseling and psychologist and award-winning health champion. Who has been talking about the childhood trauma. And we say thank you to you guys, to you, our viewer. We appreciate your time too for tuning in to our Health Corner show right here at Capuchin TV. Thank you so much and may God bless you till next time. But before that, I want to say thank you to the people who have been behind the camera. We have Eric Otino, Felix Juma, Sam Siambo. We have Valeria Mahaya. Yes, I got that right. Thank you so much. And also not forgetting Peter Mwangi, who is our transmission manager. Thank you for the good work and may God bless you. Wishing you a very good day. Bye-bye.
Your health and wellness are the most important things in your life. It impacts on how everything else happens and is received by you. Most of the times, do we give it much attention as we should? That's why Capuchin TV is bringing you this health program every Friday, starting from 9 a.m. to help you embark on the journey to wellness and living a healthy life. It is important to point out that mental health is more about wellness than sickness. Self-care is not selfish. Some of the factors that can make a big difference in health wellness are diet, enough rest, exercise, posture, and avoiding use of alcohol. Enjoy this conversation with me, Maureen Kimani, every Friday from 9 a.m. on our Health Corner show here at Capuchin TV. Your health is your wealth.
Kipaimara ni sakramenti yenye kumpa Mkristo Roho Mtakatifu na ukamilifu wa mapaji yake 7, kumfanya Mkristo mkamilifu na kumfanya shahidi hodari wa Yesu Kristo mpaka kufa.
Kupata kipaimara kama Skiza tune yako, tuma neno Skiza likifuatwa na nambari 738100272 kwa 811.
Pope Francis states that religious people must go out through the door to seek and meet the people. Have the courage to go against the tide of this culture of efficiency, this culture of waste, encountering and welcoming everyone in solidarity and fraternity. Consecrated to God,
na wateule hawa upende kuwabariki na kuwatakasa.
They are given to their brothers and sisters to bring the light of Christ wherever the shadows are darkest, to spread his hope to discouraged hearts. Missions of Hope is a program that highlights the services rendered by religious men and women in their efforts to render services in imitation of Jesus, their Master. Missions of Hope. We inspire, transform, and give hope.
Missions of Hope. With me, Sister Esther Muturi. We are going to highlight different apostolates and missions that are carried out by different religious men and women.
Kanisa Katoliki ndilo lililonifundisha imani ya kumjua Mungu.
Parokia ni kitovu cha maisha na utume wa kanisa, mahala pa kuinjilisha na kuwatakatifuza watu wa Mungu, ambao hatimaye hutuma kutangaza kwa ujasiri furaha ya Injili na kushuhudia huruma na upendo wa Mungu. Makala ya paroko na parokia ni makala maalum yanayokupa fursa ya kujua historia pamoja na maendeleo ya imani kutoka parokia mbalimbali.
Parokia hii iko na miaka 43 tangu ilipoanzishwa.
Umundo wa kanisa hii ulijengwa zamani, manake ilimalizika 1959, na wale walijenga wakiangalia labda pahali Nyahururu ni pahali ni central.
Hii ndio ilikuwa inajulikana na watu wote ambao wa Afrika walikuwa wanaabudu hapa.
Kwa sasa naweza kushuhudia kwamba kanisa la Bwana linaendelea mbele kwa msaada wa Mungu.
Parokia hii tumebarikiwa kwa njia kipekee kwa sababu huduma kwa Kristo inawezekana kwa sababu ya uwepo ya hawa watawa na pia zaidi mapadri ambao wanaishi katika eneo hili.
Kwenye vituo viko porini kidogo, ni lazima kuimarisha kidogo imani. Wako na imani lakini wanataka mtu aimarishe imani yao.
Chama cha wanawake hapa kilianzishwa mwaka wa 1982.
Our parish imebarikiwa sana. Ndio the only parish iko na 2 formation houses.
Kuhusu watumishi, vikundi vya sala na aina ya huduma zinazopatikana katika parokia zetu.
Kwa sababu tunataka kuendeleza hii hospitali yetu hudumia watu wa Mungu, tukaona wanahitaji hiyo huduma. Mara nyingine hata madaktari labda wa government wanagoma na watu wanaumia kidogo. Na pia hapa mahali tunakaa na sehemu zingine hakuna hospitali nyingine karibu. Tulionea ni vizuri tukishirikiana na kamiti yetu tuweze kufanya hospitali yetu kwa 24 hours. Kwa hivyo kwa sasa hivi hospitali yetu inafanya kazi usiku na mchana. Na tuko na clinical officers wawili, mmoja anashikilia mchana, mwingine anashikilia usiku.
Tumeanza tena kikundi kingine cha kuwasaidia refugees to reach out kwa migrants.
Je, ungependa tuangazie parokia yako? Ongea na baba paroko wako au viongozi wa parokia, kisha mtualike kupitia kwa nambari ya simu 0717-424-866 au kipenda nambari ya arafa 21760.
Kanisa Katoliki ndilo lililonifundisha imani ya kumjua Mungu.
Ni hapa tu kwenye runinga Capuchin, kituo nambari 1 cha imani na maadili ya Kikristo.
Watumishi wake Baba, wangapi waliopo, wanakula na kusaza chakula chake Baba.
Ni mara nyingine tena ambapo mama kanisa anawaalika waumini wote kuadhimisha kipindi cha mfungo wa Kwaresma wa kila mwaka. Mwaka huu, siku 40 za kipindi cha Kwaresma ni kuanzia tarehe 22 Februari, Jumatano ya Majivu, hadi tarehe 8 Aprili, Jumamosi Kuu. Idara ya haki na amani kwenye Baraza la Maaskofu wa Katoliki hapa nchini, KCCB, inawaalika waumini wote kushiriki kikamilifu katika kampeni ya Kwaresma. Kauli mbiu ya kampeni hiyo mwaka huu ni upatanisho kwa taifa shirikishi. Kuna tafakari 5 kwa kila juma katika kipindi cha Kwaresma. Wiki ya kwanza upatanisho. Wiki ya pili, afya ya akili. Wiki ya tatu, tumaini la jamii yetu. Wiki ya 4, haki ya kiuchumi. Na wiki ya 5, elimu ya uhusiano wa viumbe na mazingira. Kipindi cha Kwaresma kinahusisha yafuatayo: 1, kupakwa majivu mwanzo wa Kwaresma. 2, kufunga. 3, kusali zaidi. 4, matendo ya huruma. 5, kwenda kitubio. Na la 6, kusali njia ya msalaba kila Ijumaa. Capuchin TV inawatakia heri na baraka kwenye kipindi cha Kwaresma. Endelea kutazama Capuchin TV, kituo tambulika cha imani na maadili Katoliki.
Watumishi wake Baba, wangapi waliopo, wanakula na kusaza chakula chake Baba, nami natabika hapa.
This is who we are. We are shepherds of God's flock. We are pastors, servants of God's people. We are KCCB.
Kwa jina la Baba na Mwana na Roho Mtakatifu.
Amani iwe nanyi.
Ujumbe la Mungu kwa kuweka tayari kutoa sadaka.
Somo katika kitabu cha Kumbukumbu la Torati.
We are fishers of men, priests in the order of Melchizedek.
Somo katika Injili ilivyoandikwa na Marko.
Inasonga mbele Injili.
Kwaeni mle wote, huu ndio mwili wangu utakaotolewa kwa ajili yenu.
Vijana inasonga mbele Injili.
Awabariki Mungu Mwenyezi, Baba na Mwana na Roho Mtakatifu.
We are brothers and sisters of Jesus Christ. We are consecrated. We are religious men and women. We are CMA. We are men of action. We are commission. We are CWA. We are women of faith. We are soprano and alto. We are tenor and bass. We are voices of praise and worship.
On that great morning when the sun was rolled away, on that resurrection morning, Jesus rose to life again.
We are youth for Christ.
House 47, at St. Monica's production.
We are YCA. We are MYM.
Have mercy on us and on the whole world.
For the sake of his sorrowful passion.
We are PMC. We are liturgical dancers and altar servers. We are baptized.
I baptize you in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
We are confirmed. We are married.